The attic, forgotten for so long, held within it a trove of memories. Its air was thick with the musty scent of old photographs and moments left behind. Climbing the creaky wooden steps, I relied on the dim light filtering through a solitary dusty window to guide me. Before me stood a sea of cardboard boxes, each one a vessel carrying relics of our past. There was an inexplicable pull urging me to explore, to uncover the truths hidden within. With trembling hands, I gingerly opened the first box and began sifting through its contents. Inside were wedding photos, love letters, and mementos from the early days of our relationship. Bittersweet memories flooded my mind as I reminisced about our journey together. However, it was the album labelled Our Wedding Day that captured my attention. Flipping through the pages, I was transported to a world of happiness and celebration. Our friends and family were frozen in moments of joy, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. But as I examined the photographs more closely, my heart sank. There, in the pictures, Sarah stood radiant in her wedding gown beside her friend Lisa, both wearing infectious smiles. Yet, Lisa's eyes betrayed a secret, a knowing look that sent shivers down my spine. In her hands was a candid shot of Sarah and her boss, Robert, locked in an intimate embrace. Despite the absence of a date, it was evident that the photograph was taken years before I entered Sarah's life. A lump formed in my throat as I turned the page, revealing more images of Sarah and Robert together. Their body language spoke volumes, confirming my worst fears. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized the implications. They had been having an affair for over a decade, long before I came into Sarah's life. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of old books. The noise echoed through the attic like a thundercloud, reverberating in the stillness of the space. Collapsing to my knees, I clutched the damning photographs, feeling the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence, startling me. It was Tom, my friend and neighbour, who had heard the commotion and rushed to my side. Concern etched on his face, he asked if I was okay. I shook my head, unable to find the words to explain what I had just discovered. Handing him the photographs, I watched as his eyes widened in shock. "Is that Sarah and her boss?" he exclaimed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. I nodded, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "They've been having an affair for over 10 years, Tom," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom's anger flared, his fist clenched in frustration. "That's messed up, man," he muttered, his gaze fixed on the incriminating evidence before us. But amidst the turmoil, a resolve began to take root within me. "I can't let this go on any longer," I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside me. "I need to confront her, confront them all." With those words, I knew that my life was about to unravel, that the discovery in the attic was only the beginning of a painful journey of betrayal and heartbreak. I felt like I was dragging around a heavy chain of Sarah's betrayal, pulling down on my heart. It reminded me all the time of the lies that had piled up in our marriage for so long. Every moment with her was a battle. Her attempts at affection now just made me feel sick. I was lost in a storm of emotions, and it was Tom, my neighbour and friend, who kept me from sinking. One evening, as we sat on my porch, the sun slipping below the horizon, Tom finally brought up what had been bothering him. "Mark, you can't keep going on like this," he said, his voice full of worry. "You need to do something about Sarah, but you also need to protect yourself legally." I nodded, my mind swirling with thoughts. "I know, Tom," I replied, "but it's so hard to act like everything's normal when I know the truth." Tom leaned in, putting a comforting hand on my shoulder. "I understand, man, but we've got to be smart about this. We can't show our cards too soon. We need more evidence before you confront her." His words made sense, but it was tearing me apart to keep living this lie. I couldn't stand watching Sarah act like everything was fine. Another evening, I sat in my lawyer's office trying to explain everything. He stressed the importance of being patient. "Mark, you've got to wait," he said. "Confronting her without solid proof could make things worse. We need to gather evidence to protect your interests." I nodded, even though every part of me wanted revenge, wanted justice. I wondered if Sarah could see through me, if she knew I was onto her. One night, as we lay in bed, the gap between us growing wider, Sarah turned to me, her eyes searching. "Is everything okay, Mark?" she asked. "You've seemed distant lately." I forced a smile, unable to look her in the eye. "Just tired, Sarah," I lied. "Work's been really busy." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. But inside, I knew that things were far from okay. I knew trouble was brewing just beneath the surface. It felt like a storm ready to explode. Days turned into weeks, and I kept up this facade of being a loving husband while feeling torn apart inside by betrayal. I couldn't keep it up much longer. The turmoil within me was like a volcano about to blow, and I knew a confrontation was coming, something I dreaded. Weeks passed, and I kept on with this double life, gathering evidence quietly and pretending everything was fine. But the pressure was building up inside me, unbearable, like I was about to burst. One evening, after a tiring day at work, I got home early. Something felt off, a nagging feeling pushing me to dig deeper. Climbing the old, creaky stairs to our bedroom, I heard voices behind the closed door. My heart raced as I pressed my ear against it, straining to listen. The voices were clear, and I recognized Sarah's warm tone, filled with anxiety and something else. She was talking to Robert, her boss, her secret lover for years. They were plotting. Sarah worried that I was getting suspicious. Robert reassured her, and my worst fears came true. I felt a surge of anger and despair. How could she betray me like this? I couldn't believe I'd been living with this deception for so long, with the woman I loved cheating on me right under our roof. Stepping back from the door, my mind raced. This was the proof I needed, but I couldn't confront them yet. I needed more, needed to expose everything. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I discreetly set up hidden cameras around our home, documenting every interaction between Sarah and Robert, gathering evidence that couldn't be denied. It hurt so much to see the woman I loved betraying me. It made me sick to my stomach. But I knew I had to do it, to protect myself legally and emotionally. As the weeks went by, I kept an eye on their communications, unraveling the web of lies and deceit that had trapped me. I found text messages and emails that showed how deep their relationship was. They had secret rendezvous and plans to keep cheating on me behind my back. One evening, I told Tom everything. We sat in the dimly lit living room, staring at the damning evidence on the computer screen. Tom couldn't believe it. "Mark, this is messed up. You've caught them red-handed." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "I can't believe she'd do this," I said. "To me, to us." Tom put a hand on my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, Mark. It's time to confront her and put an end to this madness." Looking at the screen, knowing what I'd uncovered, I knew it was time to face Sarah. The confirmation of her betrayal lit a fire inside me, a determination to expose the truth and take back control of my life from the web of lies that had trapped it. With Sarah's affair etched painfully into my mind, I kept gathering evidence. I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal. The weeks that followed were relentless, driven by my need to uncover the secrets that had poisoned our marriage. One evening, while reviewing the footage from the hidden cameras, I made a shocking discovery. Sarah hadn't just been cheating with her boss. There were other men too, including a co-worker I'd considered a friend. I was stunned. I confronted Tom with this new revelation, my voice filled with anger and despair. "Tom, I can't believe it. It's not just Robert, there are others too." Tom's face darkened as he processed the information. "Mark, this is unbelievable. How many more secrets has she been hiding from you?" I shook my head, feeling like I was unraveling a never-ending web of lies. As I dug deeper, I found out her friends, especially Lisa, knew about the affair too. They hadn't just known, they'd been a part of it. But she hadn't just kept the secret, she'd helped Sarah hide her affairs and lies. One evening, I confronted Lisa, my voice shaking with anger and betrayal. "Lisa, how could you do this? You knew about Sarah's affair with Robert, and you've been hiding the truth from me." Lisa's eyes filled with tears as she struggled to speak. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you, but Sarah begged me not to tell you. I thought I was helping her, but now I see it was wrong." The confrontation left us both drained, our friendship shattered by the secrets we'd kept hidden for too long. As I kept digging, I wondered how deep the deception went, how many more betrayals were lurking in the shadows. The weight of the evidence burdened me, and the web of lies seemed impenetrable. But I couldn't give up. The truth was my only refuge now. The unraveling of our marriage had started, and there was no going back. Sarah's infidelity had torn us apart, but its impact went beyond just us. My son Alex, from a previous marriage, had always felt tension between Sarah and me. She never hid her dislike for him, and her affair made things worse. One evening, as I sat with Alex in his room, I saw the confusion and hurt in his eyes. He'd grown distant from Sarah, feeling the emotional gap she'd put between them. "Dad, why does Mummy act like she doesn't care about me?" Alex asked, his voice trembling with vulnerability. I struggled to find the right words, knowing I couldn't tell him everything. "Buddy, Mummy's been going through a tough time lately, but that doesn't mean she doesn't care about you. Sometimes adults have their own problems to deal with," I explained gently. Alex's shoulders slumped and sadness filled his eyes. "I just miss the way things used to be, Dad," he admitted. My heart ached for my son, caught in the middle of our broken family. I wished I could shield him from the pain, but the damage was too deep. The strain on our family only grew as weeks went by. Sarah's distance from Alex became more obvious, and he sought comfort in my embrace. One evening, tension filled the air as we sat down for dinner. Sarah's gaze bore into Alex, her disapproval clear. I couldn't bear to see my son uncomfortable any longer, so I spoke up. "Sarah, can we please try to make things easier for Alex? He's going through a tough time right now." Sarah's response was bitter. "Maybe if he behaved better, things would be easier for all of us." I clenched my fists, my anger simmering. But I knew that confronting her then would only make things worse. Our family fractures ran deep, and there seemed to be no easy solution. As days passed, I struggled between my love for Alex and my desire to shield him from the painful truth about his mother's betrayal. The weight of our family's troubles burdened me, and I knew that confronting Sarah would only deepen the wounds already inflicted. The evidence of Sarah's infidelity became too much to bear, a constant reminder of the betrayal poisoning our marriage. It was a storm brewing for too long, and I knew I had to face it head on. One evening, after gathering enough evidence, I had my lawyer serve Sarah with divorce papers. The weight of those papers felt like a heavy burden around my heart. Watching the process server deliver them, I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The confrontation I dreaded was now unavoidable, and there was no going back. With the divorce papers filed, I changed the locks on our home, determined to protect myself. The house, once a sanctuary, had become a battleground, and I needed to defend myself. As the days passed, I realized there was one confrontation I couldn't dodge. It was meeting Emily. Robert's wife. We sat in a quiet cafe, the dim lighting mirroring the heavy atmosphere. Emily's eyes were red from crying, her anger palpable. "I'm so sorry, Emily," I said, my voice heavy with remorse. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Emily wiped away a tear, her voice trembling with a mix of sadness and frustration. "Mark, I trusted Robert completely. How could he betray us like this?" I shook my head, at a loss for words. "I wish I had known sooner, Emily. Maybe we could have stopped it before it got this far." Our conversation was tough, a face-to-face encounter with the harsh truth that had shattered our lives. Emily's pain weighed heavily on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility for the mess. Facing Emily wasn't easy, but it was necessary to bring the truth to light. The betrayal couldn't stay hidden any longer, even if it meant more heartache for everyone involved. As the divorce proceedings continued, Sarah's infidelity was exposed for all to see. It wasn't just her affair with Robert, there were other men too, a tangled web of lies and deceit that had been festering beneath the surface for years. In the courtroom, tensions ran high as Sarah and I stood face to face. It was a moment that would determine the fate of our marriage, with emotions running raw and unchecked. Sarah's lawyer spoke, her voice tinged with desperation. "Your Honor, my client admits her mistakes." But no amount of admissions could erase the pain and betrayal that had torn our lives apart. As the truth came out, I knew there was no going back. The confrontation with Emily had been just the beginning, and now the storm of betrayal raged on, unstoppable and unforgiving. As days turned into weeks and the divorce proceedings progressed, there was one confrontation I couldn't evade: a meeting with Emily, Robert's unsuspecting wife. We found ourselves in a somber cafe, the dim lighting reflecting the heaviness of our hearts. Emily's eyes were filled with tears and anger as we sat across from each other. "I'm so sorry, Emily," I began, my voice heavy with regret. "I never intended for any of this to happen." Emily wiped away a tear, her voice trembling with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "Mark, I trusted Robert completely. How could he betray us like this?" I shook my head, feeling utterly helpless. "I wish I had known sooner, Emily. Perhaps we could have prevented this mess from spiraling out of control." Our conversation felt like a painful reckoning, a stark confrontation with the truth that had shattered both our lives. Emily's anguish weighed heavily on me, and I couldn't shake off the sense of responsibility for the havoc wreaked. Confronting Emily wasn't easy, but it was an essential step in bringing the truth to light. The betrayal couldn't remain hidden any longer, even if it meant further heartache for everyone involved. As the divorce proceedings reached their conclusion, Sarah's infidelity was laid bare for all to see. It wasn't just her affair with Robert that came to light. There were other men involved, entangling a web of deceit and secrets that had been festering beneath the surface for years. In the courtroom, tensions ran high as Sarah and I faced each other. It was a moment that would determine the fate of our marriage. With emotions running raw and unchecked, Sarah's lawyer spoke, her voice tinged with desperation. "Your Honor, my client admits to her mistakes. However, no amount of admissions could erase the pain and betrayal that had torn our lives apart." As the truth came to light, I knew there was no turning back. The confrontation with Emily had been just the beginning, and now the storm of betrayal raged on, unstoppable and unforgiving. As days turned into weeks and the divorce proceedings progressed, there was one confrontation I couldn't evade: a meeting with Emily, Robert's unsuspecting wife. We found ourselves in a somber cafe, the dim lighting reflecting the heaviness of our hearts. Emily's eyes were filled with tears and anger as we sat across from each other. "I'm so sorry, Emily," I began, my voice heavy with regret. "I never intended for any of this to happen." Emily wiped away a tear, her voice trembling with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "Mark, I trusted Robert completely. How could he betray us like this?" I shook my head, feeling utterly helpless. "I wish I had known sooner, Emily. Perhaps we could have prevented this mess from spiraling out of control." Our conversation felt like a painful reckoning, a stark confrontation with the truth that had shattered both our lives. Emily's anguish weighed heavily on me, and I couldn't shake off the sense of responsibility for the havoc wreaked. Confronting Emily wasn't easy, but it was an essential step in bringing the truth to light. The betrayal couldn't remain hidden any longer, even if it meant further heartache for everyone involved. As the divorce proceedings reached their conclusion, Sarah's infidelity was laid bare for all to see. It wasn't just her affair with Robert that came to light. There were other men involved, entangling a web of deceit and secrets that had been festering beneath the surface for years. In the courtroom, tensions ran high as Sarah and I faced each other. It was a moment that would determine the fate of our marriage, with emotions running raw and unchecked. Sarah's lawyer spoke, her voice tinged with desperation. "Your Honor, my client admits to her mistakes. However, no amount of admissions could erase the pain and betrayal that had torn our lives apart. As the truth came to light, I knew there was no turning back. The confrontation with Emily had been just the beginning, and now the storm of betrayal raged on, unstoppable and unforgiving. With the divorce finalized, I found myself navigating the unfamiliar terrain of single life once again. The house that once brimmed with warmth and happiness now echoed with the remnants of our shattered dreams. Packing up the memories that once brought joy became a painful process, each item carrying the weight of lost promises and broken vows. One evening, as I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the weight of our failed marriage pressed down on me. Tom, my steadfast neighbor and confidant, knocked on the door. He had been a constant source of support throughout the ordeal, a rock in the stormy seas of my life. "Mark, I know it's been tough, but you're doing the right thing," he said, his voice brimming with empathy. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "Thanks, Tom. It's just hard to let go of everything we had." Tom placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Sometimes you have to let go of the past to make room for a better future. You deserve happiness, my friend." His words offered a glimmer of hope, a reminder that amidst the wreckage of our failed marriage, there was still life beyond the pain. But the divorce also unveiled the full extent of Sarah's infidelity, including a heartbreaking revelation about an abortion due to uncertainty about paternity. It was a painful truth that weighed heavily on my conscience, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of her betrayal. Reflecting in my lawyer's office, he offered words of wisdom. "Mark, what you've been through is unimaginably tough," he said, his voice filled with understanding. "But you've emerged stronger, and you have a chance to build a new life for yourself." I sighed, the wounds of the past still raw. "I just wish none of this had ever happened." He nodded sympathetically. "I know, but sometimes life takes us down unexpected paths. It's how we navigate those paths that defines us." Closing the door on that chapter of my life, I found solace in the knowledge that I had confronted the truth, exposed the lies, and taken the first steps toward a life of honesty and authenticity. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative, and I was ready to embrace the uncertain future that lay ahead, armed with the hard-earned wisdom that comes from surviving the storm.